In late June, a violent road rage altercation unfolded in downtown Milwaukee and was captured on video that circulated widely. In the aftermath, a motorist who was bleeding profusely from his nose exited his vehicle mid-traffic and used a bat to strike the window of the Nissan that was behind him. The brutal display of aggression occurred in plain view and broad daylight. The bat wielder was identified as Mike Chaltry, but he subsequently told WISN 12 News, "I'm not the one who started it," before it reached its bloody culmination. The incident began with the other driver trying to cut Chaltry off on the highway. Their bumpers nearly collided and the enraged, unidentified Nissan driver followed Chaltry. After he left the highway, he walked up to his open window when they were stopped at a red light and punched him in the face multiple times. Chaltry would describe the attack as a sucker punch, saying that he didn't see it coming. The strikes broke Chaltry's nose and he later needed stitches. Even though he was bleeding, Chaltry grabbed a bat and retaliated by smashing the other man's car. He rained down blows from the driver's side door to the roof. Chaltry's newly found nemesis panicked, reversed, and then drove towards him, momentarily pinning his leg against another stopped vehicle. Chaltry nevertheless turned the bat to the Nissan passenger's side window and delivered several swings which cracked the glass. The Nissan moved from the other car but didn't drive away and pulled up alongside Chaltry's vehicle. The scene ended with Chaltry delivering one final devastating smash to its rear window. He would later say of the other driver, "He put my life in danger 3 times. When he hit me on the highway, when he punched me in the head, and when he tried hitting me with his car." I think you saw that in the video. The Nissan motorist was arrested for suspected battery while Chaltry faced charges of disorderly conduct and causing criminal damage to property. Number 28. Incident in St. Mary's. On the afternoon of March the 13th, 2 motorists became embroiled in a brutal road rage argument on St. Mary's in the northwest of Sydney, Australia, during the course of which one of them brandished a bladed weapon. The row escalated to the point that a towering tradesman with a shaved head and wearing a high-visibility vest emerged from his Honda Civic with a machete in hand. He walked up to the driver of a Toyota Hilux who was stopped in traffic on Glossop Street. They briefly exchanged words and the tradie, only identified as a 47-year-old man, tapped the machete on the other man's driver's side window. Seconds later, he cocked his arm back and delivered a devastating blow to the window. It shattered the glass, leaving a visible cut. A woman that was in the vehicle next to the feuding pair captured the entire scene on her cell phone. She let out a loud scream and said, "Oh my God," when the strike occurred. She later told 9 News, "It was just so scary," added, "We have no idea what happened, why he did this." After the brutal outburst, the tradie returned to his vehicle and no further violence occurred. His victim, who was also a man in his late 40s, was unharmed. The tradie was arrested the following day at a home in Idris Crescent, Blackett. He was charged with destroying or damaging property, use of a knife in a public place causing a person to fear for safety, stalk or intimidate, and being armed with intent to commit an indictable offense. Number 27. Charles Edward Stevenson Jr. A harrowing road rage incident took place near downtown Cary, North Carolina, during rush hour traffic. On the afternoon of June the 30th, a young girl only identified as Emma was riding in the back seat of her father's Ford F-150 when another driver, 20-year-old Charles Edward Stevenson Jr., began driving erratically on US Highway 1. He was reportedly weaving through traffic and intentionally tossing objects out of his vehicle. When one of those objects struck the F-150, Emma's father rolled down his window to confront the man. As both vehicles reached US 64 off-ramp and Cary Parkway overpass. Without warning, Stevenson pulled out a pistol and fired a single shot into the truck. That bullet passed through Emma's leg and ended up lodged in her sippy cup. The girl was rushed to the hospital and underwent emergency surgery. Her family gave a subsequent update saying she was expected to make a full recovery after 4 to 6 months of rehabilitation, despite losing part of her leg's muscle and ligaments. Emma's aunt told WRAL, "Your stomach just drops all the way down," referencing the bullet found in the girl's sippy cup. The woman said, "What an image that is, and it's nothing that you hope happens in your own life. Stevenson was arrested the following day and faced multiple charges, including assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill and discharging a firearm into an occupied property. The judge denied him bond during a hearing with a subsequent court date scheduled for late July. Number 26. Peerapat Ngamsilapakorn. Thai man Peerapat Ngamsilapakorn and his girlfriend were on their way to a Bangkok convenience store on the night of July the 11th, and Ngamsilapakorn had his turn signal on when a motorcycle rider came barreling towards him without headlights and nearly clipped him. A video-recorded confrontation ensued. The rider got in Ngamsilapakorn's face and started shouting insults as the latter's girlfriend tried to defuse the situation. Then the enraged motorcyclist swung a hard punch at Ngamsilapakorn. In hindsight, it would read as a critical miscalculation of his situation, as Ngamsilapakorn was a professional boxer whose last bout had taken place less than a month prior. According to Tapology.com, he'd amassed 7 wins during his career up to that point. Ngamsilapakorn delivered a flurry of rapid strikes which caused the other driver to drop face first towards the pavement. The pro boxer then kicked the rider twice in the chest while he was down and placed him in a headlock before passers-by intervened to separate them. The rider fled in the incident's wake, and Ngamsilapakorn lodged a report at the Sai Mai police station, highlighting that he'd given the other man every opportunity to walk away. He said, "I talked with him politely, but he refused to listen. I told him to leave, but he refused to go. I could have attacked him first, but it would not have been fair, so I let him throw the first punch." Number 25. Cynthia Sosa. On July the 9th, a road rage argument over a chicken crossing the road devolved into physical violence in Key West, Florida. At around 5 p.m., 38-year-old Cynthia Sosa stopped her Toyota Corolla at an unspecified intersection to allow a chicken to pass through the street. Perla DeMiller was traveling with a friend to pick up her child from daycare, and she pulled up behind Sosa. DeMiller began to impatiently honk at Sosa, but the latter wouldn't budge. DeMiller eventually gave up on waiting and passed her car. In doing so, she ran over the chicken, killing it. Sosa reportedly decided to teach her a lesson. She followed DeMiller, and when she caught up with her, tried to open her car door. At some point during the struggle, Sosa brandished a can of beer mace, which she sprayed into DeMiller's vehicle, hitting her directly in the face. Her friend also suffered from the effects of the mace, which were aggravated by the car's confined space. DeMiller subsequently drove away, and the victims were treated at the scene by first responders. Because their vision had been severely impaired, they were unable to provide law enforcement with the direction in which their attacker had fled. Sosa was nevertheless tracked down and arrested. Upon being asked to explain her actions, the woman reportedly told the police that she was angry that DeMiller had killed a chicken. She was charged with 2 counts of aggravated battery and 1 count of burglary with assault or battery. Number 24. Incident in Washington. At around 9 p.m. on February the 2nd, a pickup truck driver used fireworks as a weapon against another motorist in Kitsap County, Washington. An unnamed woman was traveling alone on Central Valley Road when the 4-door Dodge truck began tailing her closely. It then drove ahead of her. In the moments that followed, a passenger leaned out of the window and without warning began firing Roman candle-style fireworks directly towards her car. The incident was caught on the woman's dashcam. Bright sparks punctured the air and some struck the windshield while others bounced across the road. The woman tried to evade the firing line by moving to the other side of the pickup, but the pyrotechnic barrage continued. Once she pulled into a parking lot, the truck finally sped off. The case was described as a road rage incident, but it remained unclear what had preceded the fireworks attack. As of the latest updates, the Kitsap County Sheriff's Office actively sought public help to identify both the driver and the shooter. Number 23. Andrew Oprian. Before midnight on May the 16th, a man armed with a hatchet was captured on surveillance and bystander video, using the bladed weapon to brutalize a vehicle in the neighborhood of Brighton in Boston, Massachusetts. He was identified as 27-year-old Belmont resident Andrew Oprian. Moments earlier, he'd forced that same vehicle off the road while driving in his pickup truck. The other driver lost control, went over a median, crossed the bike lane, and smashed into a tree on Commonwealth Avenue. Surveillance video captured the moment that Oprian abruptly stopped his pickup and then walked back to the crashed car with the hatchet in hand. At that point, the victim fled. Witness Matt Silver told a media outlet as soon as the guy with the hatchet showed up and started swinging at him, he ran down the street. I think it was just road rage. The witness noted that Oprian got pretty close to hitting the victim while he was still dazed from his airbags deploying. Oprian then wielded the hatchet with both hands and frantically struck the disabled vehicle, cutting through its windshield and side windows. According to Silver, Oprian walked away and then returned to resume the attack 2 or 3 times. The victim came back to his vehicle after Oprian had fled the scene, and Silver reported that he was scared out of his mind. He was screaming, "I don't know what to do." Boston police subsequently arrested Oprian on charges of assault with a dangerous weapon and destruction of property. In court, it was revealed that the man suffered from bipolar disorder, for which he'd been hospitalized in the past. He was prescribed numerous medications and had been willingly seeing a psychologist on and off for years. The doctor in question testified that due to his condition, Oprian would experience manic states and get in skirmishes with people, often with no recollection of what he'd done. Number 22. Bennie McCoy. East Point law enforcement in Georgia responded to reports of road rage-related shooting on August the 15th. The incident began on Highway 166, westbound near Sylvan Road in Atlanta, with a rear-end fender bender. The collision had involved a mother of 2, whose identity wasn't immediately disclosed, and another driver, who was identified by Fox 5 as 21-year-old Bennie McCoy. As the latter attempted to flee, the woman tried to flag him down. In the moments that followed, McCoy opened fire in her direction. He let off one shot and the bullet went through the back window of the woman's Toyota Highlander. The projectile grazed both of the woman's young daughters, who were inside the SUV at the time. The mother raced to a gas station on Main Street and Knotts Avenue in East Point and sought help. The police responded in force. The injured girls were taken to Arthur M. Blank Hospital in Atlanta and were expected to make a full recovery. A business owner who'd witnessed the shooting's aftermath commented on the rise in violence in the area, telling a news outlet, "I pray coming in here and leaving out, and thank God I got home." During the investigation that followed, the police found no indication of any provocation and believed McCoy had acted solely out of anger. He was arrested and charged with hit and run, multiple counts of aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Number 21. Incident on Edgware Road. On August the 11th, a brawl involving 3 women and a male driver erupted in the middle of a street in London, England. A bystander recorded the altercation and posted the clip on X with the caption, "Road rage in Edgware Road." The triggering factors behind the conflict weren't revealed in the media. One of the women was seen swinging a steering wheel lock at the man while screaming, "That's my mum! That's my mum! I'm gonna kill you!" Her 2 female companions joined the fray. The trio surrounded the man and appeared to try to bring him down. He pushed back, urging them to calm down and telling them, "You've hit me, you've assaulted me." He then tried to return to his car, but the women blocked him from closing his door. One of them took control of his keys and threw them in the street, which re-sparked the physical altercation. The driver placed that woman in a headlock, prompting the others to intervene. A man, who appeared to be from their group, then became involved in the scrap with the apparent intention of easing the tension. No longer able to retrieve his keys, the driver ran across the street. As he fled, one of the women tried to hit him from behind with the steering wheel lock. She swung and missed, but the metal bar connected with the pavement, letting out an audible clang. A second man, whose connection with the others involved in the conflict was unknown, then chased after the driver. He tripped mid-sprint, but ultimately caught up with him, took him down and struck him repeatedly, losing his t-shirt in the process. The driver cowered under the barrage of strikes and repeatedly yelled out, "I'm sorry!" One of the women with whom he'd previously fought approached him and stomped on his head. He eventually staggered back to his feet when others intervened to pull the bare-chested attacker off him. The battered driver began to bleed from a head wound and said he was sorry once more before the video cut off. Number 20. Jaden Harris. What began as a minor traffic dispute devolved into a fatal shooting in the area of Orlando, Florida on August the 14th. When the police arrived at the View on Lake Monroe apartment complex in Sanford, they found 43-year-old Joseph Hall unresponsive in front of his Jeep Gladiator after he'd suffered a gunshot wound. He was subsequently pronounced dead. The man who'd shot him, 24-year-old Jaden Harris, was also at the scene. When the police asked him if he'd opened fire, the latter replied, "I had to because he was blocking me in." Harris held his hands in the air and was taken into custody without incident. He stated that the shooting was rooted in a road rage dispute that had taken place while the men were driving in the area of State Road 46 and Mangosteen Avenue. Hall was reportedly driving super slow, and Harris decided to pass him. In the moments that followed, Hall reportedly acted as if he was going to hit the younger man's vehicle. Harris claimed that he only followed Hall with the purpose of getting his license plate. Upon reaching the apartment complex, he claimed that Hall exited his Jeep and told him aggressively, "Now what's up? Now what's up?" Harris said that the other man continued to approach his car even after he'd warned him that he had a pistol on him. Harris then shot Hall when he reportedly lunged at his vehicle. Investigators concluded that the shooting wasn't justified, and Sanford Police Department Chief Cecil Smith told the media Harris had several opportunities to drive away from the incident as he followed Joseph, who was attempting to drive away. Smith reinforced that notion, stating, "A simple choice to drive away by Harris could have prevented this tragedy and made all the difference." The man was charged with second-degree murder and his case was ongoing as of the latest updates. Number 19. Incident in Granville. A truck driver on the M4 at Granville in the west of Sydney, Australia, witnessed a violent exchange between an angry tradesman and a beginner driver in mid-March. A P-plated Toyota cut in front of a Honda van during the afternoon rush hour. The vehicles nearly collided as each battled to occupy the lane. The truck driver, who only identified himself as Nectar, was positioned behind the Honda and captured what followed on his dashcam. The van driver, clad in high-visibility clothing, furiously exited his vehicle and chased after the other driver. Upon reaching the Toyota, he slapped its trunk, but the beginner driver backed into him. The tradesman was caught off guard, and after he briefly struggled to oppose the reversing vehicle, he was sent flying to the ground. In the video, the P-plated vehicle appeared to run over the tradesman's foot. He didn't seem to have suffered significant injuries, as moments later, he ran back to his van. The man he'd tried to confront then went to his trunk with the apparent intention of drawing a weapon, but ultimately reconsidered and drove off. Neither party lodged a formal complaint in the immediate aftermath, but New South Wales Police became aware of the incident and, as of the latest updates, was trying to make contact with them. Speaking to 7 News, Nectar criticized the behavior displayed by the drivers, saying, "It's stupid, just don't do things like that," adding, "You're grown men. You don't need to do stuff like that in the middle of the road." Number 18. Robert Berardi. At around 11 a.m. on January the 9th, a law enforcement officer in Walcott, Connecticut, was flagged down by a driver who was screaming, "This guy behind me is crazy. He has a machete." Walcott Police Sergeant Alex Talbot saw the man in question, 67-year-old Robert Berardi, waving the bladed weapon outside his car window. His gripe with the driver was rooted in an unspecified road rage incident. Berardi continued cutting through the air with the Fiskars brand machete after he got out of his vehicle, and as he was walking towards Sergeant Talbot, he complied upon being ordered to drop the weapon and was arrested without incident. A search of Berardi's vehicle produced a prescription bottle containing pills of a different type than what the label indicated. The police additionally recovered 40 glass-signed baggies of fentanyl. Berardi was arrested and charged with breach of peace in the second degree, carrying a dangerous weapon, possession of a controlled substance, failure to keep narcotics in their original container, and possession with intent to sell narcotics. His bond was set at $50,000. Number 17. Brawl in London. On March the 9th, a brutal 9-man brawl erupted in the middle of a busy London street. The incident occurred in broad daylight along the A12 Eastern Avenue at Gants Hill near Ilford and was captured on cell phone video by other motorists. The men threw punches and grappled with each other while standing by 2 stationary cars at the entrance to a roundabout. One heavy-built, denim-clad man was recorded unleashing blows that quickly staggered 2 men from the rival group. The first punch was thrown with such force that the impact was audible in the footage, even among the honks and revved engines of other drivers. The man on the receiving end of it was sent flying into a parked car as the denim-clad attacker turned his attention on the second man, dazing him as well. an individual from the other group ran up behind him. The much smaller man, who was dressed in what appeared to be traditional Middle Eastern garb, swung hard at the heavy-built aggressor and landed a punch on the side of his head. It did little to stop his rampage, and after a brief moment of confusion as to who had attacked him, he resumed throwing punches. Users reacting to the footage online condemned the brawl, with one sarcastically writing, "UK is a beautiful place," and another stating, "Look at these thugs, man." The user's assessment of the situation was in line with statistics that indicated a rise in road rage violence in the UK. In 2023 alone, government figures show that 143 people were killed on British roads as a result of road rage. Number 16. Brian Noll. 64-year-old New York man Brian Noll was driving his Ford pickup truck on the Long Island Expressway on April the 25th when he became embroiled in a dispute with 29-year-old Bronx resident Ibis Alex Baez. The latter was riding on a green 2016 Kawasaki motorcycle. The authorities reported that at some point during the exchange, Noll deliberately swerved his truck into Baez and crushed him against the metal guardrail. Baez suffered catastrophic injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. Noll was arrested on charges of second-degree murder, to which he pleaded not guilty in the days that followed. Baez was an HVAC installer on his way to a job at the time of his death. According to his brother-in-law, he was a massive fishing enthusiast and had been working towards moving to Florida and starting his own business so that he could eventually just stay on the water as much as possible. Two of Baez's friends spoke to ABC7 as they paid their respects at a roadside monument put together in the 29-year-old's memory. One of them described the late motorcycle rider as loved by everybody. Don't care if you knew him for 5 minutes, 5 years, 10 years. Commenting on the manner in which his life was cut short, the man said, "I don't care how much road rage you have. You know it's a motorcycle. There's no protection." Noll's legal representative disputed the notion that Baez had been innocent in the confrontation, accusing the enraged motorcycle rider of taking his hand off the throttle and attempting to break the side mirror of Noll's F-150. The lawyer pointed to that move as the deciding moment that caused Baez to lose control of his motorcycle and Noll to lose control of his pickup, resulting in the fatal crash. The case was ongoing as of subsequent information available on the matter. Number 15. Katreena Aiken. On January the 4th, while driving through Toledo, Ohio, 36-year-old Katreena Aiken slammed on the brakes of her Ford sedan, stormed out of the vehicle, and began lashing out at the female driver behind her. She spread her arms out in a provocative manner, taunting the driver and yelling, "Let's go! Get out of your effing car!" A male passenger, who was apparently still wearing his PJs, got out of the targeted vehicle and attempted to calm Aiken down, but she wouldn't relent. In a profanity-laced tirade, Aiken dared the man to hit her, saying, "Come and touch me, 'cause my man's right there," and pointed to her vehicle, which was empty. She got into the man's face and kept on provoking him to hit her. Aiken then stepped up to him and threateningly told him, "Get out of my face." He turned and walked away, but didn't make it 2 steps before Aiken threw a sucker punch that landed hard on the side of his face. He responded with a punch of his own, which spun Aiken around. He then grabbed her by the waist from behind and lifted her in a wrestling-style suplex. Aiken's glasses fell from her face and she let out an unintelligible scream before she was slammed hard in the middle of the icy road. The man got back to the red sedan and his companion drove off. Aiken slowly got back to her feet. In the moments that followed, a man in a white SUV pulled up behind her. Their relationship was unclear, but he approached Aiken and berated her, saying, "Why are you jumping out of the car on people?" before sternly telling her to get in her car and go home. The entire scene, including Aiken's tirade, the hit and the slam, was caught on video and shared widely. A number of users reacting to the viral footage labeled the woman a Karen and the body slam an example of instant karma. In the incident's aftermath, Aiken broke her silence on a community Facebook page and voluntarily identified herself. When commenters questioned if she learned anything that day, the woman replied, "Sure did. Hopefully, we all learned a lesson." No one reported the incident to the Toledo Police Department, and thus it wasn't pursued by the authorities. A spokesperson, nevertheless, advised motorists to avoid being drawn into road rage disputes and to try to get away from aggressive drivers safely before calling 911. Number 14. Incident in West Philadelphia. On March the 10th, at 42nd Street and Girard Avenue in West Philadelphia, a road rage confrontation escalated into gunfire. Surveillance cameras captured the moment that a bald-bearded man between 40 and 45 years old leaned out of a silver Honda Civic and shouted at another driver. Then, as he drove by the other vehicle, he pulled out a pistol and fired at it multiple times. In the chaos, a teenage boy was struck in the left arm, while a 20-year-old woman suffered a graze wound to the chest. Both were taken to area hospitals and subsequently pronounced as being in stable condition. The shooter fled immediately and police launched a city-wide manhunt. According to the authorities, the suspect's vehicle had body damage to its front quarter panels, a missing front passenger side hubcap, and a white vanity tag on the front bumper. The road rage shooting was one of at least 5 incidents of gun violence reported in the city that night. Some viewed the shootings as having a dark, ironic twist, given that earlier in the day, District Attorney Larry Krasner had touted a historic decrease in Philadelphian crime. Number 13. Jacob Gonzalez. On March the 8th in Austin, Texas, a road rage confrontation on the southbound I-35 service road near Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard rapidly took a turn for the worst. Just after 4 p.m., Adan Mares, aged 54, exited a car at a red light and approached a vehicle of 21-year-old Jacob Gonzalez Jr. Mares was a passenger in a car that had previously cut in front of the younger man. The latter consequently passed them and began throwing trash out of his car. When both drivers stopped, Mares went to Gonzalez to confront him about his behavior. Without any form of warning, Gonzalez pulled out a gun and fired a single shot at him. Mares grabbed his chest, staggered back toward the vehicle in which he'd been a passenger and collapsed. He was later pronounced dead and Gonzalez was arrested. He told police that he thought Mares was going to swing on him. The young man claimed that the shot was meant as a warning and that he didn't mean for it to be fatal. Gonzalez was charged with first-degree murder, held on a $1 million bond, and jailed at the Travis County Correctional Complex. Records show he had a prior weapons charge in 2023 that was dismissed. Mares' grieving sister questioned why he was released and condemned the shooting, telling a media outlet, "How could someone be so cruel to do this? You know, taking someone else's life." In reference to her brother, the woman highlighted that he never came out with a weapon in his hand. Detectives confirmed that multiple 911 calls had come in from witnesses at the time of the shooting. Criminal defense lawyer Jeremy Rosenthal described the confrontation as a muddy fact pattern, adding that road rage often escalates unpredictably once drivers step out of their cars. Number 12. Dustin Jackson and Stephen Bevan. On July the 1st in Tempe, Arizona, a road rage incident that cost a man his life was partly captured on video by his young son. 46-year-old Dustin Jackson, driving with his young daughter in the back seat, was traveling behind a Dodge Challenger driven by Stephen Bevan, aged 29. The latter had his 2 young boys seated inside. When the traffic light turned green, Bevan didn't move immediately. Jackson honked and was left idling behind. Eventually, both vehicles moved, but only to change lanes, leading to another confrontation. Bevan allegedly swerved into Jackson's lane, then executed a brake check, causing Jackson to nearly collide with him just 400 feet from the initial intersection. Video footage captured by Bevan's son showed the latter exiting his vehicle and approaching Jackson's driver's side window with his arms raised. Jackson responded by opening his car door, drawing a firearm and fatally shooting Bevan in the chest. In the tense aftermath, a boy from inside Bevan's vehicle was heard screaming, "Who shot my dad?" The chilling question cut through what was already a devastating scene as shouts of "Call 911" also echoed out. Jackson, who flashed a big smile in his booking photo, faced charges of first-degree murder and drive-by shooting. He was described as a 6'8" former Marine who weighed well over 300 pounds. Jackson physically dwarfed Bevan, who was unarmed, but told the police that he'd acted in self-defense, claiming that he feared for his own and his daughter's life. Cocaine was found in the former soldier's glove compartment, but it remained unclear if he was under the influence of the drug when he fired his weapon. As of late July, a grand jury had declined to indict Jackson on murder charges. Josh Logan, founder of Guardian Training and Consulting, taught courses on firearm safety, use of force, and gun laws in Arizona, an open carry state. He spoke to Fox 10 about the case and noted that, even though the facts were emotionally charged, the grand jury must have agreed that there was some type of self-defense element to Jackson's case. One of the factors believed to have tipped the balance towards that conclusion was the fact that his daughter was with him in the car at the time. When discussing the broader subject of road rage behavior, Logan pointed out, the most difficult emotional decision you can make is simply letting it go and driving away. Jackson still faced drug possession charges for the cocaine found in his car, and his trial was expected to begin in November. Number 11. Aaron Douglas Pruett. On April the 21st, Aaron Douglas Pruett, aged 30, became involved in a tense confrontation with a motorcyclist on the westbound Loop 101 near 43rd Avenue in Peoria, Arizona. Feeling threatened, the unnamed rider exited the freeway at Thunderbird Road and headed toward a nearby neighborhood. In a sudden escalation, Pruett drove across opposing lanes on 88th Avenue and intentionally veered onto the sidewalk. He used his SUV to run over the motorcyclist and his bike. The force of the impact launched the victim and motorcycle about 20 feet. Pruett got out of his vehicle, exchanged words with the injured motorcyclist, and then drove away from the scene. The cyclist sustained a broken leg and other injuries that required medical attention. 3 days later, police located Pruett at his place of work and arrested him. He was charged with hit and run resulting in serious injury and aggravated assault. Number 10. Tamara Hawkins. A Hyundai Elantra and a BMW X3 collided at the intersection of North Illinois Street and Marketplace in Fairview Heights, Illinois on March the 20th. The crash was the result of a road rage incident that had stretched across several miles and involved throwing objects, brake checking, and other unsafe maneuvers. Law enforcement arrived at the scene to find a brawl in full swing. 39-year-old Swansea resident Tamara Hawkins, who was driving the Hyundai, was reported to have violently lashed at the other vehicle's occupants. She opened the door, tried to remove the driver by force, and brutally battered the passenger, who was only identified as a 74-year-old woman. As a result of Hawkins's attack, the senior citizen suffered several mouth injuries that included the loss of multiple teeth. She was taken to a local hospital for treatment while Hawkins was arrested. The road-raging woman faced multiple charges, including unlawful vehicular invasion. Aggravated battery resulted in great bodily harm to a victim aged 60 or older, and aggravated battery in a public place. Number 9. Incident in West Kensington. An argument between two van drivers reached a boiling point in early July at a junction in West Kensington, London, when one of them was recorded smashing his head against the other's window. The vehicles had nearly collided while trying to turn at the intersection. One of the drivers, clad in dark shorts and a white t-shirt, got out of his van and approached the other man's driver's side window, shouting at him to get out of his way in a profanity-filled tirade. The man behind the wheel of the targeted van, which was marked London Ice, kept his cool and remained inside the vehicle. Other motorists started sounding their horns in a collective appeal for the men to move. The commotion appeared to further fuel the man's rage as he then squared up to the ice van and head-butted its side window. Video of the incident captured the loud smack that accompanied the head strike. The aggressive driver's verbal assault intensified and he yelled out, "I'll effing kill you, man! Get out of the effing way!" He dished out a few more strikes to the side of the van before he returned to his vehicle, reversed it, and drove off. A witness who chose to remain nameless stated that the ice van driver should have given priority to the other van. The witness did, however, remark that it does not give any right for the man to behave aggressively and shout and go full-on rage. Number 8. Pierre Morris and Shakeyah Jackson. On August the 2nd, a traffic dispute along US 6 near Tunnel 1 in Jefferson County, Colorado, turned into a chaotic chase and shooting. At approximately 8 a.m., a motorist called 911 and reported that an erratic driver had fired a handgun at him on the highway. Deputies located the suspect's vehicle and initiated a traffic stop, which triggered a dangerous pursuit eastbound on US 6, then onto Highway 93 toward the city of Golden. The chase ended inside a residential neighborhood where deputies partially blocked the suspect's vehicle on Heritage Road, inflicting front-end damage to it. The vehicle veered into an apartment complex parking lot where the suspects, a man and a woman, got out and continued on foot. They were identified as 38-year-old Pierre Morris and Shakeyah Jackson, aged 29. While fleeing, the duo discarded several items in a nearby pond. Law enforcement later recovered ammunition along with multiple handguns and rifles from the area. Morris and Jackson then attempted to drive away again, but the authorities conducted a high-risk stop and took them into custody. They were booked into the Jefferson County Detention Center on first-degree attempted murder, extreme indifference, second-degree attempted assault, felony menacing, felony eluding, obstruction of justice, and resisting arrest. Their laundry list of charges also included criminal mischief, reckless driving, tampering with evidence, and bond violations, along with a charge of possession of a weapon by a previous offender for Morris. The case was still under development, but the authorities noted that neither deputies nor those directly involved in the road rage incident were injured. Number 7. Leonard Cako. In the spring, two drivers, both armed with items that weren't primarily destined for combat, clashed at an intersection in Florida. On a morning in early March at the South US Highway 41 and West College Avenue intersection in Ruskin, 47-year-old Leonard Cako exited his white van with an aluminum baseball bat in hand. He approached a nearby sedan, reached inside, and began striking and grabbing at the driver with force. In defense, the victim fired a flare gun and the projectile hit Cako in the face. The latter took a moment to regain his composure and retaliated by savagely beating the car with the bat. Other drivers captured the sequence. Sheriff Chad Chronister called the incident emblematic of how quickly road rage can spiral out of control, stating, "There's no excuse for a driver to get out of their car and assault or threaten another driver." Cako was identified as the primary aggressor and arrested. His processing photo showed him still bearing injuries from the altercation, as his right cheek was covered with a large bandage. Cako faced serious charges that included burglary of a conveyance with assault or battery, aggravated assault on a victim over 65, and criminal mischief over $1,000. Sheriff Chronister affirmed that the authorities were determined to ensure the suspect will suffer the consequences of his actions. Number 6. Incident in Birmingham. Bystander cell phone footage captured in mid-March and posted on X on the 22nd of the month showed a truck driver and a woman engaged in a brutal brawl in Birmingham, England. The skirmish, which took place in Erdington, began with a woman who was wearing a hooded jacket striking a man with a long metal pole. He charged her, resulting in a brief grappling exchange. The truck driver then pulled her hood over her head and was thus able to pry the pole away from her. He began striking her with it as she threw punches at his face. Bystanders intervened and the conflict died down. In the aftermath, West Midlands Police released a statement saying that they were aware of the incident but that no one had come forward to report it. The video quickly gained over 200,000 views. One user commented, "What happened to just beeping horns and swearing with the odd finger salute?" Another commenter suggested a double standard was at play, writing, "When she was hitting, no one showed up until he started hitting." Number 5. Nytorian Allen. On July the 30th, Georgia deputies responded to reports of a possible accident on the I-85 near the 11-mile marker in Troup County. They discovered 64-year-old Richard Hawk, a Texas resident, slumped in the driver's seat, bleeding and unresponsive. Upon removing him from his car, first responders discovered that he'd been shot in the head. Hawk was rushed to Wellstar West Georgia Medical Center but ultimately succumbed to his gunshot wound. Witnesses had reported seeing road rage behavior between Hawk and another driver. They provided detailed information to law enforcement, including a vehicle description and license plate number. Authorities traced the suspect's vehicle to a residence in West Point and detained 23-year-old Nytorian Allen. He was charged with murder and possession of a firearm during the commission of or attempt to commit certain crimes. Number 4. Diego Ortega-Camero. On August the 10th in Denver, Colorado, a road rage confrontation turned deadly near the intersection of East Hampton Avenue and South Yosemite Street. Around 7:25 p.m., law enforcement discovered that two men who'd been riding on the same motorcycle had been violently struck. One was pronounced dead at the scene while the other was critically injured and rushed to the hospital. Investigators traced the origin of the crash to an altercation that had occurred hours earlier between the unnamed motorcycle riders and 45-year-old Diego Ortega-Camero. As tensions rose, the motorcyclist allegedly fired a shot at the motorist's vehicle. The feuding parties met again at the intersection of East Hamden Avenue and South Yosemite Street. Ortega-Camero then deliberately rammed the motorcycle, pushing it into oncoming traffic. In the moments that followed, the man was struck head-on by another vehicle. It was unclear if its driver suffered any injuries. Ortega-Camero fled the scene on foot, but he was arrested the following day. He was charged with vehicular homicide and vehicular assault. Number 3. Jose Valenzuela. On June the 14th, William Jefferson Johns died in a hospital in San Antonio, Texas, 9 days after he was intentionally struck by a van driven by 66-year-old Jose Valenzuela. Following an unspecified road rage incident in Laredo, Valenzuela trailed Johns to a residence in the 400 block of St. Thomas Court. When the latter got out of his car, Valenzuela intentionally rammed his blue Chrysler van into him. Johns suffered critical head injuries. He was initially transported to a hospital in Laredo before he was airlifted to a medical facility in San Antonio. Due to the severity of his condition, Johns spent almost a week and a half fighting for his life before he eventually passed away at the age of 45. Valenzuela was charged with aggravated assault using a deadly weapon, resulting in brain injury or paralysis, and he was booked at the Webb County Jail. As of the latest information available on the matter, the Webb County District Attorney's Office was waiting for an autopsy report, and the case was set to be presented to a grand jury for possible future indictment. Today's topic was requested by JLDC 072100, Marvel Boy 3416, and Tracy Powell 9518. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Gary Delandro. In April, a seemingly innocuous gesture triggered a harrowing road rage reaction in which a motorcycle rider was dragged at high speed under a car. It was the dramatic escalation of an exchange that had taken place at an intersection in the La Sierra neighborhood of Riverside, California. The state was the first in the U.S. to legalize lane splitting for motorcyclists. With the decision signed into law in 2016, it meant that motorcyclists were allowed to ride between two lanes during slow or stopped traffic, and that intentionally blocking or impeding them in a way that could cause them harm was illegal. On April the 1st, Gary Delandro was behind the wheel of a black Nissan, and he darted in front of a motorcyclist at a red light, forcing him to swerve to avoid a collision. The rider reported that he reacted by shaking his head in disapproval of 32-year-old Delandro's driving. He then heard the latter say something and walked towards his vehicle to confront him. As seen on footage captured by the rider's helmet camera, an angry Delandro asked, "Why'd you shake your head?" To which the other man replied that it was because he'd cut into his path. Delandro repeatedly said, "You're behind me, I go first." But the rider disagreed. He then got back on his bike and rode off. Unbeknownst to him, Delandro was chasing after him. When he stopped at another red light, Delandro intentionally rammed his Nissan into his bike. The motorcycle rider chose not to reveal his identity during an interview with ABC7 in which he recounted the incident. He said, "I looked back just in time to see the front end of his car squeezing between both cars. He rear ends me, knocks me off the bike and then floors it over me." The helmet camera captured the rider's muffled screams as he got trapped under the Nissan's front bumper. He clung to it as he was dragged across the pavement. The rider recounted, "It was a few seconds. It felt like forever. I started slipping and I could see the undercarriage of the car. I went from being mad to being scared." The man was able to free himself when Delandro slowed his car and reversed it, being dragged against and on the roadway had chewed through the victim's jacket and backpack. He needed staples for a large wound on his knee and additional treatment for friction burns across his body. Delandro had fled the scene without checking on him, but he subsequently surrendered to Riverside police. He was charged with attempted murder, hit and run, and assault with a deadly weapon. He was booked at the Robert Presley Detention Center on a $1 million bond. Number 1. Daniel Nations. On July the 24th, Jacob Martinez and Daniel Nations argued in traffic near the intersection of North Union Boulevard and Hillcrest Avenue in Colorado Springs. When 35-year-old Martinez got out and tried to confront Nations, the latter ran him over. Martinez was left clinging to life as Nations drove away from the scene. The victim was rushed to the hospital while Nations was tracked down and arrested for felony assault shortly thereafter. The charge was upgraded to murder 3 days later when Martinez succumbed to his injuries. Nations was denied bond and held at the El Paso County Jail with a hearing scheduled for October. Nations had an extensive criminal record and was a registered offender in Indiana. He used to live in Delphi and was at one point a suspect in the infamous Delphi murders, the victims of which were teenagers Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Their bodies were found near the Monon High Bridge Trail. On February the 13th of 2017, a composite sketch that the police released of the suspect, dubbed the Bridge Guy, bore a striking resemblance to Nations, who lived in the area where the murders had occurred. He was ultimately cleared and another man was convicted of the Delphi murders roughly 7 years later. Nations was a suspect in another killing in Colorado that occurred later that same year. The body of 60-year-old cyclist Timothy Watkins was discovered in a shallow grave off a Mount Hermon route north of Colorado Springs. Investigators found that Watkins had been shot dead. Nations, who was at the time in his early 30s, was reportedly nicknamed Hatchet Man for threatening people with a small axe on the same route where Watkins was buried. Nations eventually pleaded guilty to the hatchet threats and was given probation. He was questioned in connection to Watkins' murder, but he was never arrested and the case went cold in the aftermath. Thanks for watching. Would you rather drive the same car for the rest of your life and never pay for gas, or drive your dream car but pay triple? Let us know in the comments section below.